Good evening. Ellen Ingalls here at pressure-free.com doing an 8:15 p.m. show. If you're coming in live, thanks so much for being with me. If you are jumping on this as the replay, I appreciate you. I also realize that not a lot of people will like and heart because the kinds of subjects that I talk about are really very private, and I really respect that. But you can always DM me if you want. You can DM me right here on whichever feed you're watching. And you can always go and book a call with me if you want to have a conversation with me, if you want to learn more about pressure-free living. I just dropped my latest blog, easing, whatever you'd like to call it, newsletter. It's on my website. So you just go to the books vlog blog page and you can see it there. Um, and just have a couple little articles that might be of interest to you. I'm also doing a free training Sunday night. So you can register right on my site for that. You can just go straight to the easing and you can click on the picture and sign right in for that. So if you want to have a free training with me and some other people, it will be quite fun Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. How is this my life? That's what I've entitled this episode of Pressure Free. It's a phrase that's been moving through me for a while. And it's come up in conversations with clients, both, especially mostly in a negative sense. But I was having a beautiful conversation with my daughter-in-law today, one of my daughter-in-laws, and when I said, "How is this my life?" She thought of that phrase in a complete like, why, how is this my life? Like it's so good. So there's a negative connotation to how is this my life? Like I remember I was working with someone who had gone through two divorces, and that person was just like, how is this my life? How could I have messed up two marriages? And then the other is the positive, where it's like you're in this moment and everything is just so cool and so amazing. So I've been doing a lot of reflection on that, especially in terms of the negative, because of course that's what I'm working with people is areas of their life that are just not what they'd like them to be. They want some change. They want something to be different, whether that's fear. So it could be emotional. How is this my life? My emotions are all over out of control, or I'm so anxious or depressed, or whatever those emotions and feelings are. And then some of I call it the big three, your money, your love, your health. Okay, so money, if you're struggling in any way, like if you right now um, popped up all of your bank accounts and took a look at the bottom lines of it, you know, would you say, how is this my life? Or would you be like, oh my God, how is this my life? At this time, and there's a time element. Have you noticed that there's a time element? Like you'll hit a certain age and be like, I should have so much more money in these accounts. If it's a how is this my life idea. So there's money. Now, money is attached to our value, both our self-value and our how we are viewed in society, how we're viewed within our families. Um, Money is this is it's a currency. So we place a great deal of emphasis on the money we have, the money we've earned, because it's very much can be very much linked to our value. And so if it's not the numbers that we're looking for or that we think we should be having, it just can be such an energy suck. You can definitely be triggering fight or flight over that pretty much nonstop. It can be very chronic if you're in a financial situation where that's the case. Let's go to health next. So with health, um, again, if you're like super healthy, I don't take any medications. Like for the most part, I'm like really, really, really healthy. I feel really good pretty much every day. So it's like, how is this my life? How am I this healthy at 63, almost 64? Like I'm on fire with that. But there's been times in my life where I've said about my health, like, how is this my life? I went through a very tough time after my second child. I'll share the story briefly here, but um, I had hip and back pain during the pregnancy, but it really got worse after the pregnancy. Finally got an MRI. Turns out I have a broken back. It was a cheerleading accident from ninth grade where, just like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, where they leap up and go down into a split, I did that on the basketball court and something popped in my back. But I was getting x-rayed every single month in a scoliosis clinic because I have some scoliosis. And so they're like, there's nothing wrong with your lower back. We x-ray you every single month. It's pounded with x-rays. And so, but and people call me a hypochondriac because it hurts so much. But obviously, like I corrected it enough, or what I really did was got really strong. And so I didn't have issues for years until my second child. Got an MRI, learned it was a broken back, and the physicians brought out the spine and said, well, you don't have a normal back. You have a broken back. And I started to faint. So I put my head between my legs and he went to get juice for me, right? And then he says this, so you and Pete aren't going to have any more children, are you? And I was like, we haven't really talked about that. And he goes, well, I don't think you should even consider it because you could end up paralyzed if you were pregnant again. And 6 years later, or 5 years later, I did become pregnant with our last child. And the whole pregnancy, because of what he said, in the back of my mind was, oh no, when I give birth to this child, I might be paralyzed from the vertebrae down, like my legs, right? I had that thought, like talk about an anxious thought, right? Throughout that entire pregnancy. And but I do have to just shout out to this guy, Dave Muzakovich. He was my physiologist who taught me how to like craft my body so that it would hold the spine where it needed to be, and I almost never ever have any issues. So thanks to him, and thanks to the fact that the baby was born fine and I got back in shape really fast. But those are times when I could say, like, how is this my life? Like, what is going on? Um, so many things happen in our lives with our health. It can be an accident, it can be like a one-time thing, or it can be something chronic, and you're almost in like disbelief. Like, how is this my life? So there's the health piece of this. And then the third is relationship. So yeah, I was just on a call with some friends, and this other person has gone through two divorces, so two failed marriages, you could say. Though I always feel like there's something great and something not so great about anything in life, right? Um, and lessons that we learn. But I'm sure like you can go back in time, and I know for one of the people, one of my friends who's had two, she's like, there was I can't even believe this has happened to me. Like that was not the vision for my life. So with relationships, we can only control our own responses to things. We can only um, open up our understanding. We can make shifts and things, but we can't change another human. We can change our responses to them. And that's what pressure free is so much about. You change your responses when you're pressure free versus when you're triggered by the stress hormones and you're in a stress-based way of being. I call that not your true self. That's your self under the influence of stress hormones. And then your true self is your pressure-free self. So if we could go back in time and look at some of these things, it's like, oh wow, I was not being my true self for so much of this time, which is why there's all this discord, why there's all this unhappiness. And so relationships, another place where you can just kind of be like, how is this my life? What's going on here? How did I how did I get into this? Some people get into some very, very difficult relationships, and they can be business partnerships too. So business relationships. I've worked with clients who've been in very, very difficult business relationships. With my great grandfather, had a partner in a very, very big operation in New England, and his partner embezzled with everything. Embezzled, took everything. He stole all the money. So, so all these things can be moments where like, how is this my life? I'm sure during the Depression, I was thinking about the Depression recently, my parents going through that, my grandparents. Um, I'm sure they had those moments where they were like, how is this my life? I'm a hard worker. I've been doing everything right, right? But it's something out of our control that is causing what's going on here. So I may call this may be the next title of a book for me, but how is this my life? Because I think it's so fascinating to stop and just settle for a moment and consider what that phrase actually means and how it's playing out in our life, how it's playing out in all the aspects of our life. And typically there's going to be one spot that phrase or that question is operating more than the others. And it's usually happening when here's our expectation, but we're here. So there's this misalignment. I go into a deep session with my clients on that alignment piece. Because if we can uncover what is causing the misalignment, things can shift, things can change. But the first step is to just really ask yourself, what are the places in my life that it would be very cool to change them? It'd be very cool to make some sort of a shift, even maybe in the way I'm thinking about it. So that's what I have for you tonight, this idea of how is this my life? And I'm really curious if you want to drop me a DM or hop on a call with me because you find yourself saying that in a negative way. Um, I'm very curious. I also love to celebrate. So if you're like having a really kick-ass life right now, I would love to know that too. And with gratitude being a really beautiful emotion for us to be in, even if you're saying to yourself, how is this my life? If you can pause and look at the little bright spots, there's always bright spots somewhere in our life, a little bit of glitter is how I think about it. And in those little bits of glimmer or glitter, that's something to have some gratitude for because that can be put into your foundation. So you can feel a little more sturdy, feel a little more grounded. And then we can take a look at these areas that are like really not where we want them to be. So I wish you a beautiful, pressure-free evening and should see you tomorrow morning. Bye.